Okay. Hello, 3D and 3L.
3B and 3E.
Welcome back to your masterclasses, your second one in your fairy tale series of masterclasses. Please make sure that you're sitting upright, that you're looking at the screen, and that you guys are actually listening to... Oh, Miss Benson just emailed me. Please make sure that you're listening to what we're saying, because I don't know about you, Miss Lockwood, but last week I found a few people kind of zoned out a little bit, and maybe didn't listen to everything that we were saying in these videos.
Started looking around and looking at their bravery posters and then came back.
Yeah. So draw your focus in. This is only going to go for 5 minutes. We've got something very important to speak about, which is the next step in creating your fairy tale. So, Miss Lockwood, what element are we looking at today?
We're looking at moral.
Morals. Okay, so, Miss Lockwood, for those people, I feel as though that often this is a word that is spoken about a lot, but it's
they
not
don't
really
actually know the meaning of what it,
it's not really explained. So, I feel like I need to go over it, but I'll go over it later. This is what you're looking at today, guys. The moral of your story. All right, Miss Lockwood, I've told you the word. It is moral. So tell me what it means.
Well, Miss Barrett, I'm a little bit confused. I've heard the word thrown around a few times before in the past.
It is kind of like one of those words that you hear a lot and you feel as though you should know what it means, but often you have no idea.
Like comprehension.
Totally, like comprehension. I sometimes hear the word moral and I'm kind of like, yeah, I think I understand it, but maybe not.
Yeah, so what exactly is a moral? Are you able to help me?
Well, from the research that I've done, but from everything that I've read, it's basically the lesson that you've learned.
Okay.
So when you come to the end of a story, at the end of it, there's something that you take away from it. So, for example,
Do you mean, Miss Barrett, like at the end of Little Red Riding Hood, when everything ended happily, she learned not to talk to strangers because bad things can happen?
Totally, that's exactly right. And it's the same with a couple of other stories as well, like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. So, he kept on saying that there was a wolf, and so all the townspeople ran into the forest and all of that kind of stuff. And then one day he did it over and over again, and then one day when he yelled wolf, when there was actually a wolf there, nobody came because they thought he was a liar. So what do you think the moral of that story might be?
I think the moral of that story would be to always tell the truth.
Yeah, totally. And so these are often ones that we see a lot, don't speak to strangers, always tell the truth. And so I think when you guys are creating your story, you need to think about what moral could you weave in?
Okay, grade 3. So to refresh your memory, last week we created the character of King George.
This guy.
There he is, King George for you. And we're now at the point that you're all at, where you've created your character, either in your planner, and you've done a description of them or not, that's fine. But we now need to work out how we're going to weave in our moral into our story.
Yeah, weave a moral into the story, for sure.
Weave a moral into the story, exactly. Because we've got this character and we're sort of at a little bit of a blank.
So now it's just a case of picking a moral for your story, or us picking a moral for our story. So typically there are 3 that you see in fairy tales. The first one is always tell the truth, which we see in
The Boy Who Cried Wolf.
And the second one that we see sometimes is don't talk to strangers, which we see in
Little Red Riding Hood.
The final one, the third one, that you often see is one that's, I don't really know. Well, it's not judging a book by its cover. So I think that a lot of people hear about this all the time, but what it actually means is that you see something, you go, and you make a judgment. So let's say that you see a frog, and we see this a lot in fairy tales. You see a frog and you go, ugh.
What a toad.
But then it actually turns out to be a really lovely person when the princess finally kisses him.
And poof, he's a prince.
So, Miss Lockwood, we've gone through all 3 of the morals that we see in fairy tales, and we've also got a pretty decent, really good character. So how do we know which one we're going to pick?
Okay, so based off our character that we created last week, King George, we used some of the adjectives to describe him as being quite fat, but he was also quite sad. So the moral that would best suit our story that we could work with to create a story around that, Miss Barrett, would be don't judge a book by its cover.
Because we could do something and introduce a new character to say that they were particularly mean to him or that he didn't have any friends or anything like that. And so ultimately we could kind of turn it around.
Yeah, because the new friend could be just judging him based on his appearance without getting to know him on the inside.
Totally. So we're not going to speak for any longer, I should say. I'm going to write, or we're both going to write the 3 morals up on the board. You guys need to get your planners out of your tubs if you're in my class.
And you also need to do that if you're in my class.
And have a look at the character that you've created, flip the page over and start thinking about which moral is going to best work with the characters that you've created.
We should just add here, Miss Barrett, as well, that we're giving you 3 morals. But should you feel really comfortable with creating your own moral that fits your story,
Totally.
Feel free to take that challenge and just let us know when you've decided what you want to do.
Definitely.
All right, guys, I think that's the end of your second masterclass.
We will see you next week where we're going to be focusing on setting.
Woo!
Bye.
Bye. Au revoir.
Ciao. Arrivederci.
Sayonara.
What's it in Japanese?
That was Japanese.
Oh.